He is an IDF veteran and an officer of 24 years. And during his service, he served in a variety of positions on the front lines as an officer in the Coordination of Government Activities in the Territories, or for short, the COGAT unit. But most recently, and this is what we're going to be focusing on tonight, he founded and served as the commander of the Good Neighbor unit. Now, what Lieutenant Colonel Dror and his soldiers were doing in the Good Neighbor unit was humanitarian aid to 250,000 Syrian citizens. Okay, think about that for a minute. 250,000 Syrian citizens. That is who a Lieutenant Colonel Dror and his soldiers were reaching out to. They performed 700 humanitarian aid missions, delivered thousands of tons of food, medicine, clothing, and more. And in addition, facilitated the treatment of 1,400 sick children and 4,500 wounded civilians. All of these people, all of these Syrian civilians living in the civil war-torn region on Israel's northern border, the Syrian-Israeli border. And we're going to hear more about this right now. So welcome, Lieutenant Colonel Dror. It's an honor to be with you tonight. How are you doing?
Good evening, Yoni, and good evening, everybody. I'm great, very excited to be here with you and StandWithUs Connect, and very excited from the opportunity to share my story again with your people. So thank you, and let's start it.
Fantastic. I think the most important thing for us to do as we get started, especially now with everyone being cooped up in their homes, I'm not sure when the last time some of our viewers were actually in the Golan Heights, if they were ever there at all. So before we get started understanding the operation, maybe give us a sense of the area of operation. Where is the Golan Heights, and who were and are the major players in the region?
So I advise everybody to take a look at that picture, and we can see on it the map of Israel and the countries that around Israel. I will mark now the area of the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights is the northern part of the state of Israel. We have the border between Israel and Lebanon, and the place that our operation take care between the border between Israel and Syria, 100 kilometers of border. If you will be able now to pay attention about the blue spot, this is the area of the Golan Heights. I will explain again. This is the Golan Heights, and this is the area of Syria. It's called Quneitra region, Quneitra and Daraa regions, two regions that were close to the Israeli-Syrian border. 250,000 people were living at that spot, and this is where our story happened. Now, 2 minutes about, we call it the players that played in this area, so we will be able to take a look on this map. This map was accurated until the 1st of August 2018. From 2013 to 2018, you can all see here the Israeli-Syrian border, 100 kilometers of border for the people who has been in Israel. This is the area of Mount Hermon. We can see a little bit from the state of Lebanon, which we have a mutual border, Lebanon, Syria, and Israel, and a little bit of Jordan in our southern place, which we had also a mutual border between Israel, Syria, and Jordan. Now, take a close look about the area of Syria. You can find 3 different colors. The black one here in the southern part represented the ISIS. Yeah, the people of the ISIS, the Islamic State, were controlling this region. They were sitting next to the Israeli-Syrian border, less than a mile. The green spot where located are the rebels, the people who fought against the regime. However, in this region, there were also people that, let's say, basically do not love the state of Israel, organization like Al-Qaeda, for example. And the red spot is the Assad regime. But take a close look, you can see the flags of Iran and Hezbollah. Because of this civil war, they sent their soldiers to this area. And I think that the most important player in this issue was 250,000 human beings, people that lost everything because of that war, people that you can take a look, were living in tents and sending their sick people to these hospitals. This is an emergency room in Kinetra, and this is where they were living. And again, I think that there was the most poorest people that suffered from the war. Back to you, Yanni.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. I think you've painted an incredible picture for us right now of what exactly was going on there. And it's a little bit of a scary picture, I might say, knowing all of the players in the region. So I have to ask you, before we delve into the actual nitty-gritty of the operation, I get there's 250,000 people in need, but what inspired Israel to go out of their way to an enemy people basically, and to build an entire operation of humanitarian aid for them?
This was what inspired us.
Wow.
The destruction of Syria, the death of over than 1 million people, the displaced people, the refugees, over than 6 million people that had to run away from Syria. And we understood that there is here an opportunity to let Syrians people who never met Israelis before, if you will think about it for a second, all the countries around Israel met Israelis before. Egyptian people, Jordanian people, the Palestinian, even the Lebanese. The Syrian were the only country that wasn't any connection, any communication between Israelis to Syrians. And we found here an opportunity to let them become familiar with us by helping them. So we knew that they needed help, and we thought about helping them, and by this let them become familiar with Israelis, and maybe to change a little bit their minds and what they were thinking about Israel. Back to you again.
Wow. Wow. I mean, it sounds like an incredible idea and a mission. It also, to me, sounds almost lofty, and I wonder how it's carried out. So maybe you can describe, give us a typical day on the border for your Good Neighbors unit. What does that look like?
So the border, we should understand that the border were controlled by enemies. The Syrian regime, Hezbollah, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, meaning that every time that, for example, we go down the border fence, and you can see here, for example, one of the pictures that Israeli soldiers were treated, a Syrian guy that was wounded from the war. Every time that we go the border fence, it was risky. We knew that it can be, let's say, one of the last nights, but if we are speaking about a typical day about in my unit, so basically, as you can imagine, we are operating in the night. Night is a good friend of us. We can protect ourselves better. The Syrian people is more free to reach the border fence. So what we are doing during the day is to prepare ourselves to the operation. When you are doing 700 operations in 2.5 years, it means that every day or every night you are going the border fence between 2 to 3 times, and there is a lot of logistics thing that you should prepare yourself. There is a lot of military procedures, and of course there is a lot of conversation to coordinate it with our Syrian colleagues. So you are coordinated, you are prepare yourself, you are learning from the mistakes that, for example, you did last night. So all day long is becoming to be prepared for the main event. And the main event, of course, is the night. Every night when sunset, we are on the border fence. It doesn't matter if it is raining, it's very hot, if it's snow, we are operating, going the fence. It can take between, 2 hours till 6, 7, 8 hours sometimes, going back early in the morning, having a little bit rest. And this is day by day, day after day.
Unbelievable. This is, it's really something to hear about this. And maybe, you know, we'll zoom in a moment on what exactly the night looks like. What operations are you carrying out at that time?
So it was a multi kinds of operations. In this picture, you can again see evacuation of wounded people. It was a full operation taking care for sick children, and there was some operation that the purpose and our mission was to provide products to the Syrian people. Products like fuel, like food and clothes. You know, regarding to the clothes, just have a quick think about the meaning of people living in snow in winter time. And you know, the Golan Heights, it's very cold at winter time. People living in a tent without any heat warmers, without electricity, and a coat is saving a life. It's a lifesaver. So this was, again, one of the operations. And with your permission, I would like to share, I started to speak earlier about feelings. So I want to share with you a moment on a border fence. I think that this picture can describe it. So going the border fence for an operation. The purpose of the operation, taking children, like the child you can see on this slide, is a sick child, not a wounded, taking him to Israel to being examined by our expert doctors. However, to try to figure out how risky it is, take a look at his mother. Now I will describe a scenario. Let's say that this mother got a phone call 2 hours before she reached the border fence, and a person that she is not familiar with told her that if she will not deliver something to the Israelis soldiers, you know, when we're speaking about something to deliver, I think that you can, as an Israeli, you can understand for the people who are living outside Israel, when we're speaking about a present to the Israelis, it's a present from the kind that making a big boom. And he's telling her, if you will not give this present, if you will not deliver it to the Israelis, we are going to kill your husband and children because we are from ISIS. So in this picture, you can understand how risky it was from one hand, because you don't know who are you going to meet. You don't have any intelligence. You don't have any information about them. On the other hand, you see the children. And you know, for me as a parent for 3 children is almost everything. You know, children shouldn't have suffering from wars. So it's very risky, but when you're meeting them and when they're entering Israel, well, you can have some amazing moments.
Wow. I mean, the amazing moments are clear. That whole path, though, to get there is something I'm trying to wrap my head around. I think there's a big question of like a blind trust almost. And I'm wondering, you know, who are the Syrians, first of all? Are they trusting you? How do they trust you? How do they even, you know, how did this idea come about in their minds? And you know, how are you trusting, I guess, your connections on the Syrian side?
So it's almost hard to say, but in the beginning, it was very less trust because we weren't familiar with them and they weren't familiar with us as Israelis. But the amazing thing that we built it together by hours and hours of speaking, of understanding. And I think that the most important thing by actions, I would describe a scenario. It was one day in February 2017. The operation just started. Now, this picture, like we're seeing, we called it a doctor's visit, the purpose of children. Now, I knew that the night that we are going to meet them, it's going to be a very rainy night. And I spoke with my colleague and I told him, let's delay it. It's not a night for children and women. And he told me, we cannot cancel it. Now, at the night, of course, it was heavy rain, heavy rain. We met them on the border fence, and after we hugged and say hello each other, I told him, laughing a little bit, I told you that this is not the appropriate night for mother and children. And he told me, my friend, we're getting bombed every night. Do you think that a little bit rain can stop us? Now, we were all laughing. For me, it was the understanding about the reality. But what he had, it was, and I appreciate you because I know that the easiest thing for you and your soldiers was to stay at home or at your base. But you chose to come to the border fence in a very winter, rainy night because of us. So actions, not speaking, not writing, do the right thing. I think it can build a trust. So the trust was built step by step by actions, by risking our lives for them. And I can tell you that they will appreciate it.
Wow, for me, just what a powerful message. Actions speaking louder than words, and building that trust little by little. They're coming on these doctor's visits. Where exactly are the wounded Syrian children and citizens? Where are they being treated?
So this is, for example, a slide of a picture of one of the doctor's visits operation. It was 3 hospitals in the north of Israel, in Nahariya, Safed, and Tiberia. And there was also some other hospitals for example, when children or wounded with severe injuries that the abilities of the hospitals here in the north cannot handle with it. So we had to take them to hospitals in Haifa, in Tel Aviv, even in Jerusalem. For example, we had an operation that we did heart surgeries for 9 Syrian babies. This is something that you cannot do in Ziv Hospital. We took them to Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, and we succeeded to save the life of 7 of them. All of them, all of them were dying in 2 months if they weren't evacuated to Israel. We succeeded to save 7 of them.
So Syrians being enemy people, being treated, quote unquote, enemy people, being treated within Israel. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And what was their image of Israelis when, before they met you?
So in the beginning, and again, it's not fairy tales. I didn't Google to understand it. I heard it, their testimonies. They were educated to hate us as Israelis. This was the propaganda of the regime for centuries. In the first time when they met us, and it's not a joke, they tried to look after our tails. They actually thought that we are the devils. They told us, and hundreds of Syrian mothers are not lying. This is what I heard from every Syrian people that I met them. They were educated to hate us. Fortunately, because of this operation, they changed their mind. I'm almost sure in it.
Fantastic. This really, after hearing everything that you said so far, to call this operation unique, I think is somewhat of an understatement, and maybe then that makes this a little bit of an unfair question. But is there an experience, or maybe 2 experiences, that really stick out as particularly significant and strong from 700 operations?
So I think that as you can imagine, there was thousands of moments, but for me, the most exciting moments were to meet the children. And when meeting the children and hearing them, you can take a look about this boy and speaking with him and hearing from him that he cannot see his future. He does not believe that he will be able to continue living more than a year or 2 because he probably would be dying from the bombing of the regime. This is very hard moments. But when we treated them and we got a picture like this, for example, and we saw them smiling, it was, I don't know how to describe it, almost heartbreak, because it was amazing. It was amazing feeling, and it was the understanding that we are doing the right thing to do, and it doesn't matter if they are Syrians and we are Israelis, Muslims and we are Jewish, we are doing the right thing to do as human beings. So this is for sure one of the most amazing moments that I will not be able to forget. And a second moment that I want to describe is from this operation. Maybe we'll speak later on about the reasons why the operation came to an end, but just before it came to an end, we had an opportunity to execute one more operation, and in which we rescued more than 400 people. There were people of the white helmets, the people that defend their country, saving people that they are in homes that has been collapsed. They exposed the war that the regime is using gas, and they were all condemned to death. And when the Syrian regime conquered this area, we had the final moment to save them. In one night, we opened the fence. You can see it just here, the fence, the Israeli fence, and the Syrian people. You can take a look that there is women, and you cannot see the babies, but it was entire families. Again, more than 400 people saved in 10 hours. And when they entered Israel, we passed them to Jordan. They got all new identities, but this moment for sure I will not forget it, because it allowed our last operation, we had the privilege to save 422 human beings.
Wow. I mean, I think I'm saying wow and unbelievable quite a lot throughout this presentation, but I'm really, I'm somewhat at a lack of words or finding the right adjective to be able to accurately describe, the reaction. And I'm sure I'm not alone. Actually, I have a message here. Asim Albder he's Saudi, and he's sending respect to the state of Israel. And I think that's an incredible testament, to the power of your story. And like you said, actions are louder than words, and you build that trust up by, putting yourself online. So that's really amazing. Thank you so much for the comments, and you can keep sending your comments and questions in. But Eyal, I want to take you back one moment to, the picture you showed us before talking about the rescue of the white helmets. You were talking about the treatment of the children. What stood out to me more than seeing the medical equipment is the painted faces of the smiling children. So what's the story behind that?
So the story is very easy. I'm a military officer. My mission was to take them from the border fence to the hospital to meet the expert doctors. In the IDF, although it's a strange mission, this was a mission. This is the reason why I went down the fence. But when you are meeting 25 children, some of them reaching the border fence barefoot, some of them dirty, you can see the sadness in their eyes. You are forgetting that you are an IDF officer. You are just remember that you are a human being, and you're trying to do whatever you can do to make them happy. Now, this device, a cell phone, I never thought that I will open it and find in the YouTube Arabic songs in order that I will be able to dance with them. I barely don't know how to dance when I'm hearing Hebrew music. So try to figure me out dancing in Arabic music. But again, it was so powerful to see them. So we try to do whatever we can do in order to let them a little bit hope, a little bit smile. And this was one of the reactions. We paint their faces. We brought a medical clown that will be able to play with them. We organized second-hand shoes in order that they will not go back barefoot to the border fence. We did some actions during their staying in the hospitals that I think for them it was an added value, like you can see it from this picture.
It sounds like it's not just an added value for them, but an added value for everyone involved, and I'm sure their parents as well.
For sure. For the parents and for us, I will, sorry for interrupt.
Please.
It was an added value also for us as Israeli soldiers, as human beings.
I mean, I'm feeling it right here. I'm going to take us away from the, I don't want to take us away from the incredible emotions, but we have an interesting question after everything that you've described and the amount of work and effort put into treating these innocent civilians. We have a question from Jennifer Schnepper, who wanted to know if your unit worked with Magen David Adom, and maybe I'll broaden that question a little bit and ask, who are your partners on the ground?
So Magen David Adom was one of our colleagues, for example, when we had to evacuate some wounded people from the fence. If we were speaking about colleagues, so I think that one of the most amazing things in this operation was the collaboration, because it was a military operation led by an IDF officer, led by the IDF, but we couldn't do it by ourselves alone. We got a budget from the Israeli government. It wasn't enough. You can see in this picture, the Camp Ishai. It's a field clinic located behind the border fence, established by Friendships Unlimited. Friendships Unlimited, as you can guess from their name, are not Jewish people. They are Christian people. They built this amazing facility in which 8,000 Syrian people were treated. And regarding to the last slide of the children who smiling, it was a huge playground also in it. So while we are speaking and the audience can see these pictures, I can say that we had a collaboration with Jewish organization, with Israeli organization, with Israeli hospitals, with Christian organization. Friendships Unlimited weren't the only Christian organization, and even with Muslim organization. I will ask you a question.
Please.
Have you heard one time in history the Jewish people, Israeli people, Jewish people, Christian people, and Muslim people were working together under the command of an Israeli IDF officer in order to save the lives of Muslim people?
Again, I want to know, where that dream world is.
in the Good Neighbor Project. So it was, for me, it was something amazing. The collaboration with the organization from all parts of the world, from all parts of religious. This operation was cross-border, but it was cross-faith and religious. And I think this was one of the things that I'm so proud of it.
It really, again, I keep repeating myself. I mean, it sounds like an amazingly difficult, but also amazing operation. And that leads me really to the big question that you alluded to before, or you hinted maybe we'll talk about this. When and why did this operation come to an end?
So unfortunately, as Eyal, of course, in August 2018, the Syrian regime were reconquered this area again. I don't know how much knowledge our people, our audience have about the situation in the Middle East. I think that this is something for a different webinar, but when the Russians entered the arena and started helping the Syrians in the end of 2015, they started to reconquer the land that were occupied by rebels people. Dara and Kenetra was in the August 2018, so before a year and a half, it was almost 6-7 weeks of heavy bombing, and the regime conquered again the area. What was marked on green and black in the first map. Now everything is red because the regime is controlling there. And when the regime is controlling and blockade the exits from the villages through the Israeli-Syrian border, unfortunately, we can't assist anymore. It doesn't mean that the people in Syria, in this area, are living now in well conditions. They are living in very poor conditions, but unfortunately, we cannot help them. The regime will not accept it because it's against their propaganda.
It's incredibly unfortunate that this had to come to an end, especially as you said, the conditions haven't improved. And let me, maybe ask, is there anyone taking care of them now? Is the UN involved? Someone doing something?
As much as we know, and nobody takes care for this region, even maybe a little bit, they have their own government to take care for them, but I don't know how you are familiar with the Syrian issue. They do not have the money, and for sure they will not spend the money for the people of Quneitra. They will invest it in Damascus areas and other areas. So the people of Quneitra getting less help, and NGOs are not working in this area. So again, unfortunately, they are living in a very poor life. They are continuing suffering from not the war, but from the situation.
Wow, it's heartbreaking. It really is. Hard to continue. There's so much light in the story, and that there's a little bit of a bleak moment here. Maybe I'll take us back though to understanding a little bit of the light, because we have a question here from Rachel, who wanted to know how exactly, when you were there, you were able to work with the Syrians, you were treating them. How exactly did you, as an Israeli soldier and all of your unit, how did you communicate? What were you speaking? You were speaking English? You were speaking Hebrew, Arabic? What was the common language?
No, the languages we spoke with is Arabic. This is why my English is not quite well. Arabic was my main tool to communicate. This is what I've done in all of my military service, speaking Arabic with my neighbors. It doesn't matter if it were in Gaza or Judea and Samaria or Syria. So we communicated in Arabic and not in English. The people there, let's say 99% of them do not know a word in English.
And definitely not speaking Hebrew.
No.
That wasn't enough.
Even not shalom.
Gotcha. Wow, not even peace. Okay. Well, you joke about your English not being quite up to snuff with your Arabic, but I happen to know that it's good enough for this, more than good enough for this webinar, and it's more than good enough actually for Stand With Us to proudly send you on a speaking tour to share your story as you're sharing tonight with audiences across the world. This, of course, is back in the day when we were actually allowed to gather in groups, and it was okay to travel. But when you're traveling the world at this time, sharing this story, how exactly was it received by the international audience?
So first of all, of course, regarding to this amazing and unique cooperation and collaboration with Stand With Us, I was privileged that Stand With Us decided to send me to UK for a full week. It was 4 months ago, and when last month, just before the Corona, I visited the US, they were also helping the organizations that brought me. They're sponsoring a little bit, so I'm very fortunate that Stand With Us is behind me. If I was speaking about the tour, which was very significant for me, the tour in November 2019, well, we had 12 sessions. Some of them, like this, was in Glasgow with Jewish and Christian communities. It was very amazing to speak, to share with them. But I think that the most challenging issue were to speak in colleagues, in colleges in the UK. You can see this, for example, it was in Warwick University while I was reaching there. And in the middle of my speaking, you can see here the slide. So just when I'm telling them how Israeli soldiers saved the life of Muslim, those bunch of people jump, and in the name of freedom of speech, they stole my freedom of speech. and they start to demonstrate against the state of Israel, against the occupation and other things. Most of them, unfortunately, do not know about what they are protesting, because when they spoke with me and I asked them several questions about the situation, they do not know against what they are protesting. So it was quite challenging, but I think that it's very important to reach those areas, to speak with students, not with Jewish students, with Christian students, and even with Muslim students, because even in this issue, there was a couple of Muslim students that reached to me, apologized for the behavior, and we had a conversation. And when people have conversation, good things can happen. As you can see, just a little bit for the people, but I think that what is very important is the voice continue, and this picture is from the people, with the people that I spoke with them in Warwick University. Of course, they couldn't have shut me down. They will not be able to do this. So we continue it with approximately 60 other students. Here you can see it again, Stand With Us in UK, and here is with the SSI in the United States. So I think that during the last year, I succeeded to reach thousands of students. And for me, it's very important. I think that this story should be heard. I think that when people are hearing it, they can try to learn some more facts that it is not written in news.
I definitely think that those of you who are tuning in with us tonight, or I should say, when I say tonight, I mean tonight, we're coming live from Israel, so it's tonight here, but whatever your time zone is, I think that you've definitely gotten a sense of the importance of this story, this surprising story, I think, for many people. And Lieutenant Colonel Dror, I definitely think what you're saying about conversation and speaking and not shouting people down, but being able to talk and ask the hard questions and have these conversations is so critical. I'll go back to what we talked about in the beginning, that building of trust. I know we said that actions speak louder than words, but maybe even I think those students in the video could have learned a lesson, if they had understood that sometimes, just showing up and using words in a positive way and having a conversation is an action in and of itself. And I wish that would have been the case. But thank you so much for making sure that you share this story. There were a couple of questions here before we begin to wrap things up. One was, I think there was actually, let's put two questions together. How did you make sure that there were no hostile refugees coming through? You mentioned before that there was the distinct possibility of that happening. And B, what happened to the Syrians after they were treated?
So I will start with the B because it's the easiest question. When they were in Israel and approximately 7,000 of them entered the state of Israel, we treated them and then they came back to Syria. Now, the decision when they will go back to Syria was a medical decision. It means that me as the commander of this operation, when I brought them to the hospital, I didn't have any ability to speak with the doctors. When the Israeli doctors decided that the condition is well enough that they will go back home, then they ordered us, the soldiers, to bring them back home. So everybody go back at home. Regarding to the first question, so one of the toughest moments was going defense, understanding that it might be the last night. People who visited this area can easily understand that the topography of this area, meaning that when I'm on the border fence, I'm down and the enemy is higher up. In the language, it's mean huge disadvantage. Now, we understood that the enemy can shoot, launch, or send a suicide bomb. We didn't know. It wasn't 100% safe, of course, but being a military career, it's not safe. So, of course, we did what we have to do to protect ourselves from hostile people. But again, it doesn't matter, or it doesn't change the effect or the thought that every day might happen the worst. Fortunately, nothing happened on the border fence, but it could happen in seconds.
We're thankful that nothing happened and that you're here to hear your story with us today. We have a final question from Stephen Franklin, who wants to know if you ever heard back directly or indirectly from any of the Syrian families following their return to Syria.
The reason why I'm not answering, because it's a very sensitive question. Unfortunately, I didn't hear from them, especially when the Assad regime took over about the place. What we have today is memories of this action, but I want to finish this, or to answer this question in a positive way. So I wanted the audience will take a look about this picture. I will try to do something strange here now. Hopefully everybody can see. It's better to see this than to see my face. It was in the beginning this and become this. And this was one of my best memories, because the story about this picture is a 9-year-old girl, a Syrian girl, that reached the border fence suffering from very hard diabetes. And we saved her. We took her to the Israeli hospital, and she was there for 6 months. The Israeli doctors told us that 24 hours later she wouldn't have survived. And after 6 months that we visited her, it was the time for her to come back home, and she wanted to give us a present. So again, she asked me, what is the flag of Israel? I took a picture and I showed her in my phone, and she started to draw it. And you can see how hard it was for her to draw the Star of David. But in the end, she succeeded. And this was the picture, the flag of Israel. And I think that what is more important, is written in Arabic just above. So here it is written Wiham. This is her name. For the people that can read Arabic, they can see that there is some spelling mistakes. But again, when you are 9 years old, not going to school, you don't know even how to write your name. And I think that the love sign is familiar for everybody. And what is written here is Abu Yaqub, which is my Arabic name. So this girl, a Syrian girl, dedicated the flag of Israel to an IDF officer that saved her life. So this is what we have now, the memories and the understanding that we saved the life of hundreds of thousands of people living now in the other side of the fence. And as much as I claim, they will not forget the state of Israel.
I can't imagine any of them would. And I think, Lieutenant Colonel Dror, it's very clear that Operation Good Neighbor went beyond the border in more than one way, not just beyond the physical border, but you went beyond the border of, really stark differences or opinions or ideas that Syrians had about Israelis, and maybe even vice versa. You went past that border and went past the language border as well to treat the quote-unquote enemy people. 250,000 Syrians taken care of, be it through food, clothing, or as clearly, obviously, the medical treatment that you gave to the 1,400 children and 4,500 civilians. And I want to thank you first of all, I guess as an Israeli, thank you for your service and thank you for representing Israel out there on the border and putting your life in danger. And maybe this is the time for me to thank you as a citizen of this world as well, for being out there on the border and crossing those invisible lines that shouldn't be taken for granted, and really uniting mankind in the understanding that when there are human lives at stake, when there are people that are suffering, it doesn't matter what the nationality is, and Israel will always be there to be a good neighbor. So thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror, for this great live webinar here at Stand With Us Connect. And I also want to thank all of you who are tuning in with us right now. Thank you for supporting our mission to stand up for Israel and to fight anti-Semitism all around the world. Now, before we wrap up and say goodbye officially, again, I want to remind you, if you enjoyed the broadcast tonight, if you love the work of Stand With Us, go on over to standwithus.com/donate. Make whatever contribution you feel comfortable making. A little bit goes a very long way and ensures that we can continue offering programming like the webinar that you experienced and enjoyed tonight. Also, again, if you really enjoyed this and you know somebody, you know a group of people who would really appreciate hearing this talk or hearing any other talks and seminars, webinars by Stand With Us, head on over to StandWithUsConnect.com and you can book a private webinar for your own group. But in terms of public webinars, very important, I want you to pay attention to what's coming up next. Again, StandWithUsConnect.com has a full schedule, but just one sneak peek at upcoming programs. Monday, March 30th, we will be hosting Noah Pollack. He is a lawyer and political activist who helped write the Taylor Force Act, which is a U.S. bill that conditioned the U.S. aid to the Palestinian Authority on the cessation of payments to terrorists and their families. And he's going to join us here on Stand With Us Connect to discuss the bill, the year-long campaign behind the bill, and the lessons that Israeli activists can learn from it. Again, check out StandWithUsConnect.com to see our full program, and we really look forward to seeing you again here and for you to join us for many more webinars. Because remember, most importantly, if you can't come to Israel, we're here. We're going to be bringing Israel to you. I'm Yoni Zierler, live from Israel for Stand With Us Connect. Shalom, and we'll see you next time.
Shalom, and take care.